Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sanders and this is Watch Art Sci, the art and science of watch collection. Today we're going to talk about manual winding watches, or just manual watches. And the impetus for this came from really two sources. One, it's become the type of watches that I collect. And perhaps more importantly, there was an article written that was in 2017 back in Quill and Pad, and it was called "Manual Winding Watches Are for Horological Connoisseurs." Now, when I first started collecting watches, I never thought about looking at the movement. The first one I got was a Patek Philippe Calatrava with a solid back. Later I got this Vacheron Constantin, and it too had a solid back. It has a Frederic Piguet movement in it, which I thought was sort of interesting. And then I was told, well, you really need a sports watch, and so I got a sports watch, which was the original Vacheron Constantin overseas, which had a solid back. And the more I got into it, the more what am I getting all of this for, and what's going on, and so forth. And I started watching and looking at the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève. That was sort of my base for, well, okay, if I don't know anything, so I'm going to see what all of the experts say. Now, a couple watches here, one by Carrie Wooten Lana and the other by Roger Smith. One of the quotes from this article, it said, nearly all haute horlogerie today includes a glimpse into the movement via see-through back, or see-through case back. Now, the one on the right by Roger Smith is, you can see it through the front. So, I mean, was going to make no mistake about it, you're going to see the movement. And, it's like, why not? I mean, this is what do we collect watches for if we're just going to look at the dial? Okay, I mean, the dials are nice. So let's take a look at this whole idea of manual movements. One of the things was that the article points says, why put in all of the finishing and movement complexity if no one will ever see it? All right. I mean, we're collecting an archaic kind of mechanical phenomena, primarily watches, and why not look inside of them? I mean, all of us, like I and probably most of the rest of you, when we set our watches, we use our iPhones or our computers or something like that. So having the right time really isn't the big issue here. Here's a couple here, one by Laurent Ferrier and the other one by Philippe Dufour. And in looking at those movements, they're really beautiful things to look at. You can see on the right there, you can see the balance wheel. You can see the escape wheel. You can see some of the gear train. And on the Philippe Dufour, you can see the way the sides have been beveled. Yeah, it just, these are really very attractive things to look at. So, and we can find out about those things. We can find out more about watches and have a lot more fun with them, rather than just looking at a big fat rotor or a blank wall. Here's there's my first watch, my Patek Philippe Calatrava. I had one picture taken, and this was by Patek Philippe. I asked him to do it when I was at the service center. The other one is a Harry Winston Premier by Retrograde. And now it's got a movement by Gerard Perregaux, and then it has an Agenhor by Retrograde. Well, you can't really see too much. That great big fat Harry Winston rotor covers up a lot of stuff. So I don't, I mean, they're watches. I suppose you can move the rotor around and see a little, and they do have a window for it, but, what's the point? Now, what I did, there are a couple different watch group sites, and I put together a little questionnaire just to sort of curious to find out, well, how many people had, what percent of your watch collection was manual wind. Now, here's this pie chart. Those who had none made up about 29%, almost a third of all of the collectors. They had nothing but automatics. Right? A few of them had less than 10%. In other words, they had one that was a manual. The biggest group was 38%. They had about 10 to 30% of theirs were manual wound. And then another group, the yellow one, had 30 to 49% were manual wound. And 15% had 50 to 69% were manual wound. And then in the green group, there was about 70% to 89% of the watches they had were manual wound. That was where I ended up. There was one group that had 90 to 100% manual wound. Now, another thing I was looking at is that I was looking at the Aiguille d'Or, which is the grand prize for the Grand Prix d'Horloge de Genève, which is sort of the Oscar Awards. Now, in the 18 years that they've had winners, we're on year 19 now, only 2 of them were automatic. One was early on in 2002, they had a Patek Philippe that won that had an automatic movement. And then a few years ago, there was a Tag Heuer that had an automatic movement. The thing about the Tag Heuer was that it was like $150,000 one-off watch, and I think they made it just so they could have bragging rights or something. But the great majority of the best watches, or the ones that are judged to be the best, are ones that have the manual wind. In other words, the movement is manual, not automatic. All right. Now, I have 2 watches that have won a Grand Prix award, not the big one, but they won one for the men's prize and the other one for what's called the Petite Aiguille. And both of them have interesting movements to them. The Harboring to Felix, you can see it's a relatively simple one, but beautifully done. The other one, the FP Journe, that won the men's prize, not only does have a solid gold plates and bridges, but they also has the double barrels, and you find out about that stuff. You look at it, you play around with it, and something comes out of it. All right. Now, the other thing is, I think it's important to understand, you don't have to be rich. There was something, one of the Omegas, the Man on the Moon ones that had the manual movement, the original one had a solid case back on it, the Moon watch. And they had one of the subscribers said they called it the Sapphire Sandwich. I said, nobody calls a watch the Sapphire Sandwich. Well, they do. And they call it a Sapphire Sandwich because on the front and the back, they have an exhibition window, which is, most of my watches have that, but I guess for the Moon watch, they call it the Sapphire Sandwich. And look at that movement. It's a beautiful movement. I think it's a Lamania base or something like that. It's a gorgeous movement. And why anyone would want a Moon watch without that, I don't know. It does for timekeeping. Now, next to it is a real, relatively bargain watch. It's called the Tissot Heritage. And it's a simple watch. And on the back, you flip it over, and you can see it's got an ETA 6498. Okay, you can't see a lot of it, but you can see some of it. And if if you're a pretentious watchmaker like I am, those kinds of things are interesting. Now, not only is it used for manual wind with an exhibition window in the back. This is you may remember we had something called the Military Watch Project, and we were all going to make a military watch. It took me a lot longer than I thought. And here's mine. I still have to do some trimming on the stem there to get that down. But here, when I look at the back, I'm not looking for great workmanship. In fact, this is a Chinese knockoff of the ETA 6497. What I'm looking at is, well, what does this gear do? What does this gear do? What does this screw do? And so forth. And you got a big thing to look at. Now, this thing costs around $100 to put it together. Had a lot of fun doing it, but still, I wouldn't want to have one where I couldn't see the movement. So it's not. So, your high horology and your real expensive ones at that, but so do some of your other ones. This watch I happen to have on, one of the things they pointed out, I said, more traditionally designed movements featuring classic complications in architecture are generally perceived as better as the price bracket goes up. 500 years of watchmaking and 100 years with rotors. And so, in going back to the tradition, the heritage of watches and watchmaking, you have 4/5 of that time there were no rotors. And this example here this is a watch by Marco Lang, formerly of Lang & Heim, I guess. What he has done, I think, is he wants to show more and more of the movement, and instead of having a great big plate in there, he has what's called a trigonal bridge. And you can see most of the movements. You can see the frost that he put on. You can see the engraving that was done. I mean, this is a gorgeous watch, and you can see the snailing on the two winding gears, the winding gear and the barrel. So, I mean, that's very much a part of the watch. Now, the front of the watch is fine. I like looking at it. Great for telling time. But what I spend most of my time looking at is looking at that gorgeous movement, learning about it. It's a lot of fun. All right. Now, there was another thing in there that's really funny in this article. And it talked winding is spending special time with your watch. And it sounds like spending special time with your kids or your dog or something else, and that's exactly what they were talking about. I was thinking about that, and these are 4 watches that I have, and with the different kinds of things that they do. This is my Vacheron Constantin Resonance, chronometer Resonance. And it's the one up in the upper right corner there. And it's really 2 watches. And what you can see in the back, you can see how when you wind it from this the top crown, and you see that little wheel in the middle wind both watches simultaneously. That's sort of a cool thing. This is the lower right there. This is my Henry double hairspring, and here again you have this really really gorgeous movement that they've made, and you can see not only do they have the what you'd expect to see, the balance and the escapement and so forth, but they also have the power reserve indicator in the back instead of cluttering up the front with it, and you're winding away, and it takes a while to wind it. Now on the bottom, this is one really interesting watch. This is my Beauvais 1930, and again, you can look at the movement. The movement was made for this case. I mean, when this thing was put out, it has that so much of the movement is visible through the back. On the upper left up there, you can see a Vacheron Constantin Historique Americain 1921, and you can see a lot of it's covered up. Well, it's a smaller smaller movement relative to the size of the case. It was sort of an interesting thing too. That thing takes all day to wind. That's the longest winding watch I have, and it's got a relatively short. It's like 42 hours or something like this. This is a 7-day watch. That's another thing. You have all of these different kinds of things with the watches. Now, it's not piling on complications. Like you have some of the watches do 5 or 6 different things and just dogpiling complications. It's not that at all. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, you ought to get a tourbillon." If they maybe someday, but what I'm more interested in is how they have set up to get the basic time. One of the most interesting things that I can't afford, they have them though, watches with remontoire d'égalité, which is a little wheel that's on the inside that sort of works like a little clock within your watch. It's a very interesting little timing device. I mean, so you have all of this stuff to look at, and I guess what I'm saying, these are all manual watches. Now, so often, this is someone says, "Well, Rolex they have all automatic." Let me tell you, that's true, but my goodness, when they want to do a manual wind and have it, you can see it through the back. Boy, the Cellini Rolex Prince is amazing. This is one of the few watches where if you look at the back, you can see the I guess there's something like Geneva waves. They're not exactly, they're just sort of a spiraling engraving that they have, but then it carries over to the front, or the front carries over to the back, either way you have it. It's an amazing movement too. It's a beautiful movement with the way the bridges come up like little waves. Man, that is so neat. It's they had it from way back when, and then they brought it back again, and I think they brought it back in 2005, and then they dumped it because I guess Rolex owners are too practical. They get the automatics and the solid case back. So anyway, people wonder, how come Rolex doesn't have it? And to me, it's a shame. It's not that they can't do it; it's that I guess they decided not to. Anyway, I'd like to hear your opinions and stuff. I'm not picking on Rolex. Yes, I am. I guess I am. I'm picking on them because they got rid of this, so I have to dig up to find them. I'd like to get your opinions. What do you think of manual wind? Do you spend time with it like walking your dog or something like that? I do. I mean, winding a watch is not a chore, it's an opportunity to do something I really enjoy doing. So let's hear your ideas. By the way, too, tomorrow is the last day to enter the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie little thing. We have the Grand Prix picks. After the 31st, it closes down. I'll put my picks up there after that. And then sometime in September, they'll come out with the pre-selected, and we'll have our first winner. So I got a lot of watches I've been accumulating between now and the last contest we had. We had one little contest. I had a nice little watch for it too. So anyway, if you're interested, please join us. We have until Sunday. We have a review. Hope to see you then, and then of course tomorrow for our live stream. Take care. Bill Sanders for Watch Outside, the Art and Science of Watch Collection.